estimating millions of pieces of debris orbiting. Where does it come from?
Well, the main source of it, unfortunately, again, is us human beings here on Earth. And as we launch things into space, not all of it exactly ends up in orbit. There are pieces that are shed off as the satellites and operational components are put into orbit. But then these other pieces are left either in orbit for weeks, months, thousands, even millions of years, and this is the problem that people are starting to become aware of and having to deal with.
And you've got a piece with you, and that's not a little piece when you think of it, up in space and could hit something.
This is not little, no, and this probably represents about the average size of a problematic piece of junk in space. And the fact of the matter is we can only track things down to about a third of this size. Everything else, this is actually an old Canadian instrument that's actually flown in space. It was used to take pictures of the northern lights and research in that. But this was safely brought back to Earth. But the problem remains with things like this here, that this in and of itself remains a big piece of debris. But of course, things like these small components on here, this is what can be fatal to people on the space station, to people on the shuttle, and even billion-dollar satellites, communication satellites, the satellites that broadcast these transmissions that we're using today. These are the problems, and we can't track things that small. So we need to come up with ways to mitigate the amount of debris that we're putting in orbit.
So how do you deal with all this? Because I'm sure there are huge implications if this hits either an astronaut out there on the Canadarm or it hits a space shuttle.
No, and this is what the ongoing problem is. I mean, there have been a lot of coverage of the fact that the shuttle gets hit on its way up, but what doesn't get as much publicity is the fact that there are also dozens of debris strikes that happen over the course of the mission, that these are just repairs, they fill in little potholes here and there. I mean, flecks of paint will cause divots in the windshield of the space shuttle.
A fleck of paint?
A fleck of paint will actually do it.
Now, how could it do that?
Well, you're talking about things that have a relative closing speed of 14 kilometers per second. Now, to put that into perspective, you have the average highway driver driving at 27 meters per second. So compare that to 14,000 meters per second. That's how fast this stuff is traveling. So you have to try and protect against that. And it's not like moving your spacecraft out of the way or stopping for that matter. Things just keep going. And this is where a lot of the research or the first steps of research are going into in terms of how can we govern the orbital traffic, so to speak, and such that we can sort of have a better idea of where debris exists and sort of get around it if we need to.
So how do you think Canada should actually get involved then in trying to clean up this mess?
Well, right now it's not even a matter of cleaning it up, because there isn't the technology that exists to do that. Where Canada can get involved is the fact that just coming up with policies and instilling design constraints within the missions that it puts into orbit, like the RadarSat-2, for example, making sure that it is successfully deorbited and burns up in the atmosphere or otherwise removed completely, and tracking this stuff and just making sure it's all disposed of properly.
So I guess you figured with the infinity of space, how does this stuff kind of come in line with something else? I mean, there's so much room out there. How does it hit something?
Well, and this is the thing, is that we're in a unique position here where we have we know that this kind of problem exists, so it becomes a matter of, well, how, what can we do? We know that there's a problem. We've seen similar things here on Earth in terms of what we do with our garbage. So how can we sustain the usability of space? And that's what the basic premise becomes. So
it's great. Kevin, thanks so much for bringing this in and letting us know what's really going on there.
My pleasure.
Out in space. Well, now for a look a little more here at home for your national weather forecast, and here is Teresa Fisico.
Thank you very much. Well, Eastern Canada seeing the summer-like weather today in contrast to the west, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Temperatures mild. We saw a few showers across central Quebec and in through central parts of Ontario. Along the stationary boundary, we'll continue to see some